a road safety campaign.
Dion Anglin, Shanda Gallego, and Felicia Rankin Solens.
If you see news happening,
Contact our newsroom, 949-7799. Radio Cayman News, the ultimate in news and information.
Radio Cayman,
The voice,
the heart, the soul of the Cayman Islands.
For the health of it, Radio Cayman's premier health show is brought to you by
Healthcare Pharmacy, caring about your health for the past 25 years.
the Cayman Islands Civil Service Association.
Chlorodo bleach. Mildew, no problem. Stains, no problem. Whites, no problem. Sanitary cleaning, no problem. Chlorodo bleach has got you covered. Available at Foster's Food Fair in 2 liters and 1 gallon sizes. Pick up a bottle today.
This is For the Health of It with Tara Bush.
Hello and welcome to For the Health of It. We are interviewing Dr. Piloto. He is a physician from overseas, and we're going to be talking about obesity tonight. Hello and welcome to For the Health of It, Dr. Piloto.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm well. And now we're going to go to our commercials to introduce our sponsors and thank them for their continued support right after this break.
when you need a bleach to make your scene clean, get Chlorodo Bleach for the ultimate white and the ultimate clean. Chlorodo Clean is always seen.
The ultimate clean is a Chlorodo Clean.
The Cayman Islands Civil Service Association, CICSA, is an association that brings all government employees together at the workplace, social events, and in matters of concern common to all civil servants. For more information on how you can become a member or to read our story, visit us on www.cicsa.ky or on facebook.com/cicsa.ky. CICSA, connecting, informing, and engaging our membership.
Refilling and transferring your prescriptions have never been this easy. Simply go to healthcarepharmacy.ky and follow the easy directions from your desktop, mobile device, or tablet. All you need to do is pop into Healthcare Pharmacy in Grand Harbor to collect your prescription. They're open 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 10 till 6 on Sundays and public holidays. No waiting in line, no wasting your lunch hour, no stress. Just easy online prescription refills and transfers from the pharmacy that has been caring about your health for 25 years. Call 947-8900 to speak to a pharmacist or go to healthcarepharmacy.ky and make life easy.
This is For the Health of It with Tara Bush.
Hello and welcome back to For the Health of It. Hi, Dr. Piloto. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing, Tara?
I'm well. Thank you for working with the tech guys, because this is an overseas interview, and sometimes it can be tricky, but Dean and Jared got us all worked out.
Yeah, I think sometimes we just got to work through some of the kinks, but the most important thing is that at the end of the day, we get our message across, right?
Yeah, and it's crystal clear. So thanks, Dean and
Great.
Jared. So before we go any further into the interview, I think it's best if you give a elevator pitch on who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I work for the Cleveland Clinic in Weston, Florida. And what I am is I'm the medical director of the executive health department here in Weston, Florida. So essentially my job is I'm a primary care physician, but my specialty is more in what we call preventative medicine. In other words, we'd like to try to treat patients before they become ill. And so that's why today, when you guys wanted to talk about obesity, I will tell you that obesity is one of the most preventable diseases that we have. And therefore, in our practice, we definitely talk a lot about obesity and how we can help improve it, but more importantly, how we can avoid it.
Yeah, I have to tell you, at one point in my life, 15 years ago, thereabouts, I was 428 pounds. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. And I had medical intervention. I had gastric bypass surgery. I've managed to maintain, I would say 90% of the weight loss, because I'm about 180 pounds. So, I changed my life. I liked what Gabby said on the bottom of this: weight control is not short term.
It is not. When we talk about weight control, it's a lifelong sort of practice, right? We can always lose a little bit of weight here, then we gain it back, lose it again, gain it back. The goal is to try to lower the weight to an acceptable level, just like you did. There are many ways of doing that. With gastric bypass, that's one option. But ultimately, the goal is to maintain that weight like you've been doing. So it's nice to hear that you've been able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's been a journey. And, what I'm excited about is this is preventative rather than, curative. So let's get into the interview, and maybe
sure.
Let's discuss why it's not so healthy to be obese, but how can obesity worsen outcomes with COVID, for instance?
So we know that obesity can just make us sick, right? And the way it does that is because we can develop diabetes, high blood pressure, which then those things can lead to heart disease and strokes. So we already know that when we're obese, we're at risk of these conditions. Another one that a lot of people don't think about is cancers. There are some cancers that are linked with obesity. So therefore, if we can maintain a healthy weight, we can really avoid a lot of these complications. And so in COVID specifically, because of what we were talking about, most people who are obese already have certain comorbidities like diabetes, like high blood pressure, heart disease. And when you get sick with COVID, which can cause an inflammatory process in the body, that can really lead to complications. In fact, people who are obese have a much higher rate of hospitalizations, ICU admissions, use of or need for mechanical ventilation, and increased death and mortality if they do have or do get sick with COVID. So we know that in order to really, if let's say you get COVID, to really be safe or at least to get through it, one of the key things is to have a normal weight.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think people understand that a couple of things, that digestion really taxes our body.
It does.
And the food that we eat or digest is really what helps us to build a strong immunity. It's one of the things, one of the components, I should say.
Mm-hmm. So,
like if we're eating high sugar, high fatty foods, then this is actually stressing our already stressed system, and not really enhancing our immunity system. Am I correct?
You're right on the money. What happens is, processed foods, high starch foods, high sugar foods, they cause inflammation within the body. Just to kind of put it in simple terms, when someone eats a lot of sugar or becomes diabetic, what essentially happens is the body has a chronic inflammatory process, and that makes the body age much quicker. So a person who's a diabetic will probably lose the kidney function much earlier than someone that doesn't. And the same thing goes with the heart, with the lungs, and other organs in the body. So essentially, just to keep it simple, your body ages much quicker with these inflammatory processes. So the best thing to do is to try to maintain a low starch, low sugar diet, eat more fruits, more vegetables, and obviously lean proteins. So that's usually the best way to keep that immune system strong, decrease inflammation in the body, and just keep general health.
Right. Thank you for that. So now we've jumped from, because we understand it's an impact of COVID, but just normal life without even COVID being a factor of this. How does obesity impact our life expectancy and overall quality of life?
Well, I think it impacts both significantly. Number one, we say that we want to live long lives, right? But we don't want to just live, we want to be able to live a long life with a good or high quality. And therefore, with diabetes, your life expectancy is going to drop. And on top of that, if let's say you happen to have diabetes and live a longer life, your quality of life is going to drop. For example, diabetes can impact vision, so you may lose your vision. Secondly, it can cause numbness in your hands and feet, and that makes balance a lot more difficult. On top of that, you're more susceptible to infections. So any little cut or wound that may happen in the body, an infection can set in very quickly. And as we had talked about earlier, the chances of developing cancer are much higher. So people who live with diabetes, or I would say, very uncontrolled diabetes and obesity, are going to have a lower quality of life for sure. And also, they're going to have a shorter lifespan. On top of that, as we get heavier, that puts a tremendous stress on our bodies, on our joints, on our back, and can really debilitate people as the weight continues to go up. So the best thing to do is to try to maintain a healthy weight, to try to minimize the damage on the joints, and obviously to decrease the damage of the body in general.
Yeah, for true. I mean, I don't think people understand what, and I'm going to demonize it, and I don't mean to, but sugar, how bad sugar really is for us. I don't, even though the medical community really hasn't come out and condemned it, I truly believe that sugar is like pouring, and I'm exaggerating, so please, my audience is kind of understands my humor, but I do believe that it does lead to cancer. It's
yeah, we don't want to demonize sugar because there's a lot of there's a lot of things that have some sugar. For example, fruits that can be healthy if eaten in small portions. If you really enjoy a dessert here and there, listen, we don't want to tell people they can't have a dessert or maybe a soda or a juice, but it has to be really decreased. It really has to be minimized, because when sugar is taken up in high consumptions, that's when it really creates a problem. So we don't want to demonize sugar, but at the same time, we want to make sure that people are aware of the damage that sugar can do to our bodies if we don't take into account how much we're putting in our bodies. And unfortunately, so many things now have sugar.
Yeah.
And a lot of things they put in these corn fructose syrups, which have a lot of sugar. So it's really important to read the labels before we eat something to understand how much sugar it has. And obviously, it starts at a young age. So it's not just about us. We have to teach the younger kids, our children, that they can start learning and getting good habits from a beginning. because sometimes it's really hard once you're used to eating a certain way to then change what you do. So if you can get these habits early of understanding that sugar should be limited, not used in high amounts, I think that's the way to start. But as adults, we have to really start thinking about that, at any age to really start doing that. And some people say, well, I've been doing this for a long time and I've been eating a certain way, and they want to keep doing that. But I would still warn them that maybe they've been okay for now, but you never know what the future can hold if you continue to eat high amounts of sugar.
Yeah, it does catch up with you. I mean, when I was 428 pounds, I was actually malnutrition because my diet was, I think I drank about 72 ounces of Coke a day. That's a lot of sugar.
That is.
And then I add a patty every single day, which is our national breakfast food, I think. And very seldom did fruits or vegetable cross these lips.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for the medical intervention that I had. And I'm not trying to beat up on people and their foods because it took me a coming to Jesus moment. Nothing was really wrong with my health other than I was finding it very hard to move. It was the insurance company actually found it hard to justify a cause for me to get bariatric surgery because I didn't have diabetes. I didn't have high cholesterol. What we found out later was that my lungs were being crushed because of the weight.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point that you're making there. That's one aspect of COVID that sometimes we don't think about. We talk about obesity and COVID-19 being so dangerous. And what you just mentioned is one big part of it. The ability to not move as well as you want, to be able to get around. And then on top of that, that excess weight sort of pushing inward and crushing the lungs so that the lungs can't take deep breaths.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the biggest issues that we see with COVID and obesity is the inability to take deep breaths, the inability to move around. So that's what makes it very difficult. And that's with COVID. But obviously, just like in your experience, that's exactly what starts to happen. We can't move around, we can't breathe very well. And so then exercising becomes very difficult. Just getting out and doing the simple things that we're used to doing, going down, going to our car, walking to our car, just walking around the house and doing simple things like that become very difficult to do.
Yeah. I remember my dad parking really far in the back, and I was like, he's trying to kill me. We joke about it. We just joked about it on
He
Friday.
was probably trying to save you.
Yes, he was actually. My dad is my hero because at the time he was a lot fitter than everybody in our family, and he was, he's 25 years older than us, and he was in his 50s outrunning us and outwalking us. But anyway.
There you go.
So, why can obesity, how does it lead to, these severe conditions like hypertension and diabetes 2, heart disease and cancer, and what else,
Sure. So, what happens is as we continue to get heavier, one of the things is we're not as active because everything becomes difficult to do. And with less activity, elevated weight, the blood pressure starts to go up, caused by something that we call atherosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries. And so then on top of that, as the weight goes up, cholesterol levels start to come up. And as the cholesterol levels go up, they start to form plaques within the walls of the arteries, which then diminish blood flow into the heart. And then over time, or many years of obesity, we then can have a heart attack or stroke. And that's when it gets really complicated because once you have a heart attack or a stroke, then mobility becomes even more difficult. On top of that, the higher the weight goes up, we can also develop diabetes because the pancreas gets overwhelmed by the amount of calories, by the excess fat and sugar intake. And what ends up happening is that the pancreas starts to wear down. And when the pancreas wears out, we don't have enough insulin available to drop the sugar levels. And now all of a sudden, diabetes starts to develop. And once you start adding that combination of diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol, it's almost like a perfect storm. That's when people get complicated. On top of that, sugar, because it's a high sort of caloric and energy level, it helps in creating, or let's say if a tumor starts to grow in the body, a cancer or tumor has cells that require a lot of energy because they want to multiply, they want to grow. So, in order to feed a cancer, the more sugar you give that cancer, those cancer cells, the quicker they're going to grow. So, if we can diminish or decrease sugar and decrease obesity, the chances of developing a cancer are less because you won't have as many calories in the body or as many sugar molecules in the body that will feed that cancer to grow quicker. So, all these things really start to add up and start to lead to, as we talked about, diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, cancers. But on top of that, what I had mentioned earlier, we start to sort of wear down because our joints can't take that weight that we have on our bodies. Our backs can't do that either. So we start to become debilitated. And so therefore now it's hard to get out of bed. It's hard to do those simple things that we used to do, and therefore our activity levels start to drop. So as you can see, it's just a vicious cycle. As we start to gain weight, all these things start to come out, and over time, the body can only take so much of that, and eventually the person will either have a heart attack, a stroke, or develop a cancer, and then that can lead to death.
Yes, it's that's certainly true about the ultimate end of it leads to end of life if we're not careful.
Yeah, one of the worst things that we can do is lay down somewhere and not move. And that's essentially what starts happening. The heavier we get, the less activity because everything is painful to move. And so what happens, we end up just sitting around or laying around. And that's probably one of the worst things that can happen to the body because then you're also susceptible to blood clots. When we don't move, the body's susceptible to blood clots as well. And so therefore, it can impact everything.
Um, I have a question thrown in here for you.
Sure.
From a caller. It is, what are the different symptoms, say, of high blood pressure, and are there any sorts of non-medical, like medicine, ways of healing hypertension?
So the first thing I would tell you is we call high blood pressure the silent killer. The reason we call it the silent killer is because a lot of the times there are no symptoms at all. When you have high blood pressure, you may not feel anything, and the first thing that you feel is a heart attack or a stroke. And that's the dangerous part about high blood pressure. And that's why it's so critical to come in and get a checkup every year to see how your blood pressure is doing. And another thing that we recommend nowadays, you can get a blood pressure cuff at home. And so you may have your own machine at the house. And if you do, that's great because you can check not only your blood pressure, but your family member's blood pressure as well, and just see where it is. And if it is elevated, and we diagnose high blood pressure when the blood pressure is more than 140/90, and if you see those numbers, it's good to go in and see a doctor to see if you need some kind of treatment. Now, normally to treat blood pressure, we normally recommend medications. There are multiple medications that you can take to really control that. But yes, there are other ways to manage blood pressure before we get to medication, and that's losing weight, So maintaining a healthy weight. Number two, eating low in salt. A lot of the foods that we have contain a lot of salt or sodium. So we'd like to keep the sodium content under 2.5 grams. On top of that, we want to make sure that we get enough sleep. Unfortunately, poor sleep can sometimes lead to a tiredness, exhaustion, and what ends up happening there is that in turn, blood pressure can go up. There's a condition that's known as obstructive sleep apnea, which can also happen with obesity. And obstructive sleep apnea means that as we sleep at night, we don't get enough oxygen into our tissues. We wake up regularly and we don't go into our deep sleep known as REM or rapid eye movement sleep. And that actually can raise blood pressure as well. So there are a lot of things that we can do to try to help that. Obviously losing weight, or if you do think that you have this sleep apnea, you can get a test done to check for that. And then on top of that, just obviously eating healthy in general, exercising every day. We recommend about 150 minutes of some sort of cardiovascular workouts. And so I try to break it down for patients. I always say, if you can give me 5 days a week of 30 minutes of cardiovascular work, that's what I ask of them. That's what I challenge them to do. If you can work out every single day, that's even better. But I know with how things are and how busy sometimes we get, it's really important to just really make that effort. And just think about it almost as if you were, taking a shower. We take a shower every day, or we plan our meals every day. It's important to plan an activity every day. Almost make it part of your routine. Where, hey, look, from 7:30 to 8:30, I'm going to walk or run or ride a bike, or in the evening, whatever makes it easier. But to really start putting that in your daily activities. So, in other words, to decrease high blood pressure without medications, exercise, weight loss, sleep better, keep an eye on your blood pressure throughout, because if it doesn't come down, the best thing to do is to get medications in order to prevent a stroke or a heart attack. Because unfortunately, once we have a stroke or a heart attack, sometimes it's very difficult to recover from that. And I would tell you, a lot of people say, I don't want to take pills, I don't want to take a pill. But if you ever talk to a person who's had a heart attack or stroke, they would tell you immediately, I would have taken that pill any day, regardless of the side effects that potentially it could have, because we know that a stroke or a heart attack really can impact our quality of life.
Okay, we're coming. We got about 3 minutes left, so I just want to, go back to weight control. Isn't for sure is not short term. It doesn't have to be like soup. I think if you can work on your mindset and look at it as not a chore, but something you really enjoy, and this is what you're going to get out of it, it'll really help. Nevertheless, what are some optimal health and nutritional habits people can establish to manage their weight and avoid obesity?
So I would say the number one thing is going to be portion control. Unfortunately, sometimes we just eat too much, right? And so therefore, portion control is important. I have had patients who have told me that they've lost weight, more or less eating the same things that they've been eating, but just cutting the portions down and making the plate smaller. Another thing to think about, we call this the plate method. And essentially, what it means is that we want to have half of our plate with vegetables, a quarter of the plate with starches, and a quarter of the plate with lean proteins. And so, what that does is that it makes you think about what you're eating every day. And if half of your meals are vegetables, right then and there, we know that we're cutting back on the calories. Other things that we can do to really control the obesity problem, or the weight issues, is, as we talked about earlier, staying active, really going out there and exercising if you can every day. It takes half an hour of your day, and if you do that, that really helps. And then the last thing I would say is snacking. It's good to have your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner, but try to avoid snacking in between. sometimes when we get stressed or we get nervous, sometimes an easy thing to do is to go and grab something to eat. And sometimes when we get emotional or we're, we're anxious about something, that's sort of an easy thing to do. So if I can mention another thing is just try not to snack. Just eat your 3 meals a day. And if you can avoid that, that also can make a big difference.
Well, thank you so much. Believe it or not, the half an hour flew like a rocket. So we're going to have to wrap up. And I welcome you back onto the show anytime you wish. And we can continue this obesity conversation. Always welcome to come on, Dr.
Piloto.
There
you go. And thank you very much, Tara, for having me. And we're not too far away from you guys. We're down here in close to Fort Lauderdale. It's in Weston, Florida. And if you ever have any listeners out there who want to come get what we call an executive physical to really take care of them and prevent these conditions from coming on, please give them our information over here.
I will. Thank you so much for being on For the Health of It, Dr. Piloto, and spending a half an hour with us. Have a good
Take care, Tara, and I'm so glad to hear you're doing well and have come from where you were. That's amazing. So keep it up.
Thank you. Thanks for being on For the Health of It. We are moving you to the life you want.
Chlorodol Clean is always seen.
The ultimate clean is a Chlorodol Clean.
The Cayman Islands Civil Service Association, CICSA, is an association that brings all government employees together at the workplace, social events, and in matters of concern common to all civil servants. For more information on how you can become a member or to read our story, visit us on www.cicsa.ky or on facebook.com/cicsa.ky. CICSA, connecting, informing, and engaging our membership.
Refilling and transferring your prescriptions have never been this easy. Simply go to healthcarepharmacy.ky and follow the easy directions from your desktop, mobile device, or tablet. All you need to do is pop into Healthcare Pharmacy in Grand Harbor to collect your prescription. They're open 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 10 till 6 on Sundays and public holidays. No waiting in line, no wasting your lunch hour, no stress. Just easy online prescription refills and transfers from the pharmacy that has been caring about your health for 25 years. Call 947-8900 to speak to a pharmacist or go to healthcarepharmacy.ky and make life easy.
For the Health of It, Radio Cayman's premier health show is brought to you by
Healthcare Pharmacy, caring about your health for the past 25 years.
the Cayman Islands Civil Service Association.
Chlorodol bleach. Mildew, no problem. Stains, no problem. Whites, no problem. Sanitary cleaning, no problem. Chlorodol bleach has got you covered. Available at Foster's Food Fair in 2 liters and 1 gallon sizes. Pick up a bottle today.
This is For the Health of It with Tara Bush. For the Health of It with Tara Bush.
From district to district, moving through the waters to Cayman Bracken,